I know this is different to what I normally do, but while I was looking for material for what I usually do on this channel, I was listening to the James O'Brien show, and while I was listening, Emily Maitlis came on, and she was talking about Kamala Harris's new running mate, Tim Walz.
Kamala Harris, the Democrats' candidate for the next American election, yesterday announced her vice presidential running mate. And Emily Maitlis, our resident American politics expert and, of course, the host of the Newsagents podcast and the Newsagents USA, is here to tell us who he is and what this means. Emily, good morning.
Morning, James. I think you said something really spot on a second
First time
ago.
for everything.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked. But you described him as happy in his skin. And I think that is a key component to who Tim Walz is. He is a very canny choice. He's possibly also a chemistry choice. You know, on paper, you can see why Kamala Harris chose him. He's a veteran. You know, she introduced him as a sergeant major at the rally last night. He's also been a football coach, a coach in the school, you know, school kids. He's been a school teacher for 12 years. But I think it's when he starts speaking that you suddenly understand it, because he looks and sounds like the kind of Trump voter that she's trying to win over now. You know, he describes Trump voters as his neighbours, his family members, people he might disagree with, but wants to understand. It's a very, very different tone to, you know, Hillary Clinton's sort of despicables idea that you heard 8 years ago. And I think there is something now in her pick for VP, which is about trying to bring back, I mean, we've heard so much about you know, the 53% in this election so far, the women's vote, you know, women's reproductive rights, women's rights, and how important that is. I think Kamala Harris has made a calculation now. She's kind of getting them back. You know, she's getting the women's vote already. She's getting young women in droves. But now she's after the guys' vote, you know, and he's a guy's guy. She thinks this is a way back to the male vote, possibly.
And as you say, the chemistry is how they appear together. I mean, it does. I mean, it looks like a room you'd quite like to be in.
Yeah, I mean, I heard something which might explain a little bit more of that, which is that she left the choice very late between the last two. And we were looking at Josh Shapiro, the Pennsylvania governor, and Tim Walz, the Minnesota governor. And I guess, again, if you go back to paper, Josh Shapiro makes a lot of sense. You know, the governor, very popular governor of an absolutely critical swing state, and he's great on the campaign stump. Everyone kind of says, oh, he sounds just like Obama. You know, he's got all these kind of very good crowd vibes going on. But I understand that actually when she got together in the room with him, it was Shapiro who was saying things like, well, what would I be doing? And what would my task look like? And how would we be playing this? And she kind of didn't want to hear that. You know, she's been the number two. She wants to be the number one. And when she got to Tim Walz, he just kind of said, what can I do for you? How can I best help? How could I serve? And I think that may speak to something of the chemistry now. She's been number two. You know, she's ready to be number one. And she wants the guy who comes in after her, underneath her, actually, to be just, you know, putting all ego aside and ready to be her vice president. And I think she heard from Walz that I mean, maybe everyone says this, but he doesn't particularly have ambitions to be president, which, you know, may change the dynamic a bit as well.
Not that long ago, he wouldn't really have had ambitions to be vice president either, I don't think. It's been an interesting political journey. Is he the fella who first started calling the Republican leadership weird?
We think that that's where it originated.
Because that's really worked, hasn't it?
It's really worked, and it also speaks to the kind of thing that I was trying to enunciate a bit before, which is, I mean, have you watched Fargo? Like, a lot of your listeners will know Fargo, and they know this phrase of Minnesota nice. You know, think somewhere between Frances McDermott, the policewoman, and the girls who are interviewed in the hotel, in the sort of motel afterwards, and they go, hey, he's a kind of funny-looking guy, you know? Funny looking. And I think he's done that with weird. Weird isn't a big, grand, you know, insult. It's just something you can't put your finger on that makes you feel a bit sick. And he's kind of make that spread quite virally. And I think this is, I mean, when you say he doesn't have ambitions, I wouldn't know, because quite frankly, he has played a blinder. In the last 3 weeks, basically since she became the candidate, he has been everywhere and he has been super smart. He has positioned himself very well. And the kind of rhetoric that he uses when he's talking, for example, again, last night, the first rally they did together, when he's talking about abortion rights, and he feels very strongly about abortion rights, he's tried to safeguard them in his state of Minnesota. His own kids were conceived by IVF, which puts him already on a sort of, on a fight with J.D. Vance, who is anti-IVF because it's, the work of the devil, blah, blah, blah. But he was talking yesterday, not in terms of women's rights, which, might be a bit scary to some people out there. He just said, what your neighbor chooses to do is nobody else's goddamn business. And it was a really sharp way, I think, of putting the message back home, which is not, get up on your soapbox and fight for women, which maybe a lot of middle America kind of, a lot of the guys don't particularly want to involve themselves in. But he turns it into a kind of like, you hate politics, I hate politics. Wouldn't it be nice to have politicians that left us alone? And I think that's a much cleverer way of doing body autonomy. If you're trying to sell it to the rural voter, if you're trying to bring back the white guys at the Trump rally, who probably don't really like the idea of a Democrat, have been told that Kamala Harris is a socialist, may have ideas about her race. He's meant to be the kind of guy that says, I'm like you.
So he's not condemning people who hold different opinions. He's merely promoting the notion of live and let live, which is about as close as a politician can get to having their cake and eating it. Will there be a debate with Vance?
I'm sure there will.
He is weird. I don't think that's even an opinion. That's almost just an objective statement of fact. That label is hung around his neck now in a way that is going to be impossible to remove.
So there's a couple of things, just sort of social media things that people have been picking up on over the last, 24 hours. One is Tim Walz positioning himself stroking a cat. Right? I don't know where that photo came from, but clearly the idea is that, he is a cat lad, a cat laddie, and Kamala might be her cat lady, and J.D. Vance does not seem to like cats. It's been completely taken away out of context from whatever the hell J.D. Vance was doing with that weird thing when he was insinuating that people without children don't really care about their country. But he's kind of just slipped that in, I'm a safe pair of hands. The other thing he did last night was he talked about being willing to debate Vance if he would get up off his couch. Now, for most people, that will just be a completely normal way of saying, if he dares come to the wicket, come to meet me. But anyone who's been seeing the viral memes about J.D. Vance and what he did or didn't do to his own sofa, I should say completely false, complete disinformation, completely fabricated. It was just a meme that got out of hand. But you feel that Walz is kind of having a bit of mischief. He's kind of throwing one out to the crowd. And when he said it, I was looking at Kamala Harris's reaction. She's like, oh, my God, he went there. Should he have gone there? I don't know if she should have gone there. My sense
But he
would
can
be,
do that as a deputy, can't he?
He can just about do that. I mean, I think he's probably got to stay the right side of,
Sure.
kind of let's bans, and let's not actually spread disinformation about a guy when there's plenty of real stuff to go on anyway. But I think it allows her to be squeaky clean. She can play the whole Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high. She can go high, and she knows that he's coming in just below, spotting all the places where he can go slightly weird, which line. I think is probably going to work for her in a way that, and going back to the Shapiro thing, Shapiro, the guy that many people are saying, why didn't she pick Josh Shapiro? He's got this, he's a governor, she needed Pennsylvania. He's also a former attorney general. And I just can't help thinking that if you have two former AGs on the ticket, it starts to look like a lawyer's joke. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's kind of, it starts to look a bit like, we're out to get Trump. We know, we're going to lock him up. It's kind of funny for about 5 minutes. And then it starts to look like, really? Are all your friends lawyers? And I think what she's done with Walz is choose a totally different vibe. Now, look, maybe the vibes thing doesn't last them forever. Right? Maybe
that was going to be my final question, because she's certainly enjoying a bounce now, and Walz has contributed considerably to the bounce.
Yeah, I mean, she is up in the polls, I think, 9 points amongst millennials and Gen Zers, which is big, but arguably, that's not how the polls work in America. It has to be the swing states. What does Walz manage to contribute? Does he manage to bring in voters from the areas that she really needs, which is Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania? Does she manage to bring, as I say, the male voters back? And I would say when you look at presidential strategy, look at the campaign merch. The first thing that has come out of that rally is a hunting hat, which says Walz Harris. Now, Walz is also a hunter. He gave an interview.
Ice fishing
and pheasant.
Yes.
He says I've shot more pheasant than J.D. Vance. Now, if you are appealing to gun owners, if you're appealing to men, if you're appealing to the rural voters who, Biden was never going to really kind of get their juices going, but suddenly you put a guy who knows how to wield a gun or what do they use in ice fishing? Is it a spear or a rod? I don't know. We'll have to go and ask Tim Walz. But you sort of see where she wants this campaign to go now, kind of heartland stuff in the sort of Great Lakes areas, these are the places. Yeah, she wants.
Absolutely fascinating. I don't like messages like this, Emily Maitlis, but you'll see that I have to read it out from Matt. He says, I could listen to Emily all day. She's brilliant. Please pass it on, mate.
Oh, thanks, Matt.
Quite an interesting conversation, wasn't it? Now, there were a number of things I thought, that's interesting, because I agree, he does look like somebody who's very comfortable in his own skin, doesn't he? He looks very, very comfortable, and he looks a happy, jolly person. He looks like somebody you'd love to go out and have a beer with, and you'd be quite happy to leave your kids with him, because it'd be one of them where, he'd make sure everybody's snacked up and looked after, and he's got that welcoming smile as well, doesn't he? And be also somebody who would, if he won't say to you if you're stuck somewhere, or if you catch the number 7 bus, you should be able to get to where he'll say, right, where are you? Let me know where you are. Just stay there, I'll come and pick you up. And that's the sort of person he is, by the looks of it. And that speech he gave was brilliant, wasn't he? He absolutely brought the house down. No nerves there at all. Went straight into it with that speech he did. And the couch jibe, I thought was hilariously funny. But I just wanted to know what your thoughts were, what Emily Maitlis said. Because I thought what she said, the reason why she picked him was very, very interesting. There were loads of other interesting stuff in there that I found interesting. But I just wanted to share this one. There's going to be at least, could possibly another 2 James O'Brien videos, because there were a couple of interesting calls that I just wanted to share and get your thoughts on. But also, don't forget, tonight I'll be on live streaming with Reagan Elite. So hopefully see you there and at 8 o'clock. And I should just leave the video here and take care, my friends.